Hey gang, it's Friday and I've got too many lights on. Sorry for the glare. I'll get rid of them in a minute. Friday, time for Friday fights. I see somebody backstage. I think that's Blake, back from vacation. I think Matt's on his way back from vacation. I saw he's going to be running late. But plenty to talk about. First up, well, actually, not first up, but what we're going to be talking about today, Tuesday's presidential pep rally, because it wasn't actually a State of the Union. It wasn't a scheduled State of the Union. The president doesn't call that. The speaker does. Also, federal job cuts and the private sector, the ramifications that apparently no one saw coming. And a big question on so many people's minds, can Trump actually dismantle the Department of Education? But first up, before we talk about that, what does the Department of Education actually do? Blake and I discussed that a couple of weeks ago and really haven't finished that conversation. But first, before anything, another month-long postponement of tariffs. And this time he means it, I guess. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, tell a friend. Help us grow this growing community. Yesterday we had listeners in Saudi Arabia and a growing audience in Australia. Shout out to everybody listening on Radio X, headquartered in Perth, Australia, but also throughout the country. It is, let's go through the, I like doing this now too. It's 3:04 a.m. in Sydney and Melbourne, 12:04 in Perth, 17:04 in Berlin, where we also have listeners. Shout out to them. 4:04 p.m. in London. Shout out to everybody listening on UK Media, Channel XL. And 11:04 here in Tampa. 8:04 out of KSHP in Las Vegas. And by the way, Atlanta is America One Radio. We've also got WZQR in Pineland, Florida, down by Naples. And Rainbow Radio, Yerg's Radio, and the rest of the Mastiff Media Network. Speaking of which, I think I'm actually on with everything. Let me give a quick look around. Oh, there's one. We're on Discord too. The Yerger Group Discord server. We can be seen there because we use the video feed for that. I think it's that one. There we go. All right. Now, first up, like I said, and also, now we are the lead in for another show that is not only on Yerg's Radio, but is also on Radio X and WZQR. Sportcats Daily Gazette will be following directly after today's show today, 2 hours from now. I'm not going to go through 6 different time zones again. You can figure out what time zone that'll be by using what we use. That's worldtimebuddy.com. All right, who is it that is backstage? That's Blake, host of The Homeless Conservative. He's got a couple of new videos out this week. And I'm back from, what was it last week?
I was just in all-day meetings with some,
I think you said that.
Yeah, I'm doing a little side project currently.
I won't, it wasn't the one that you're going to think it was, but some other super fans said that it was because of the week before that.
No.
On-air pissing match that you and I had.
No, it was a scheduled all-day thing on Friday.
Blake's going on strike.
unrelated to politics entirely.
Yeah. Okay.
Doing some boring data migration stuff. Nothing I want to bore the listeners with.
Well, yeah. Speaking of not boring the listeners with, but I will anyway. There's been some advancement in the, how should I say it? The eventual independence of Mastiff Media from some of the third-party groups that support us now, that, like any other radio station, support us now. We'll be having our own servers, hopefully by the end of the year. And from that, the development, I doubt this will be ready. But, I'm constantly bitching about, there's all kinds of stuff spread out over 4 monitors.
Yeah, we need to get you some buttons.
Yeah. Well, I talked with some software developers, and they're going to start on a program that's both local on the computer for things like the soundboard, so that it still controls everything else, but then also server based, so it doesn't tie up too much of my computer. That'll bring together the video feed, all of the different types of audio feeds, and then things like the clock timers. Um, what else? Chat. It'll centralize all the chat like Restream does.
We do end up
But
having a lot of
Restream,
things up when these things are live. Although I would highly suggest this year, because I don't know if it works with your setup, but these stream decks, we can talk some tech stuff if you want to at some point
yeah. So
after we're off air.
I'm
But
familiar with them. I don't use them because I like my physical desktop, the actual piece of furniture, to be empty.
yeah,
Right
I
now,
think
there
I
are
think you change your mind, man. It's it's pretty great because I can just everything's right there and I can just feel my way through it. It's kind of nice.
yeah, and I get that, and yeah, I mean that's certainly got an advantage. But right now, there are four things on my desktop: a keyboard, well, five, okay, because the keyboard and mouse, um, the
Oh,
computer tripod or the camera tripod that's right there, my iPad, which is on to all of the affiliates, because while you're talking or while Matt's talking, I'm going to be listening to
yeah,
see how
make
that
sure it's
feed
working.
is. And the most important item on my desktop is the cup of coffee.
Well, I mean, I'd say your microphone is pretty important too.
Well, that's well, yeah, but
It's not actually
that's
on your desk. I
clipped.
guess it's a boom
That's
arm, right?
clipped to the desktop.
I've got
Yeah,
my whole desk set up with boom arms now. It's the best ever, but it is not clean. I will send you a picture of my desk in the Facebook thing, and you will laugh
yeah.
at the
I
messiness.
do have wires all over the place. There's the
Yeah.
one for my headset, and the other item that's on my desk is my phone, because that's how we connect to Chatter, which got our first, as far as I know, our first listener from Saudi Arabia yesterday checking in.
Which I was
And
gonna
we got,
say, I hope no one's listening to us at 3 a.m. in Australia, but I was up till 3 a.m. this morning, so I guess some
you know
people
what?
might be.
Scott Browning, the president and general manager of Radio X, which is actually not like a fan thing, it's actually a business. Um, he said that their listenership went up all night. So both West Coast and East Coast of Australia
Okay.
since we came on.
I hope they're people with night jobs and not people that are dealing with insomnia, just for the sake of them, you know.
Well, one of the things we'll tackle eventually, and I got to get back to it so it doesn't fall through the cracks. They've got, I don't know, the Australian version of Donald Trump, who's rebranding the red MAGA hats to make Australia great again. And it's to say he's far right. He's doing the same business model that Trump used to take control here in the U.S. And he's essentially creating a far right political party that is it's very polarizing like it was here. There's the right and extremist type people that are attracted to it, and there's everybody else, including people on the right, that are not.
Yeah, I think unfortunately the whole world's kind of going through a populist nationalist thing right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's weird how that happens worldwide. I don't That's a strange thing to me, how that seems to be almost contagious in a way.
Which, by the way,
I think it's more about the populist nationalist thing than it is about Donald Trump or the right. Like, I know people are trying to imitate Donald Trump. I find that it just doesn't work very well most of the time. But I mean,
we'll
obviously,
talk about that today.
there's
How
no
it
doubt
doesn't work.
populism is having a moment, and so is nationalism
Yeah.
in a lot of countries. Although it's interesting how
Which, by the way,
that
is
doesn't translate.
exactly what Hitler did. Although he called it something else. I just learned what he called it yesterday because I was doing some work. I've got 10 pages of notes as an outline for that white paper that we're starting to write.
Yeah, I
That's
feel I'm still not, Hitler was a little bit more. I mean, there are some similarities in the sense that he was certainly riding on the wave of the anger of people that were economically
absolutely
depressed, and that was, that's certainly I think what's happening, but, that doesn't mean that every populist is Hitler necessarily. It's kind of one of those tricky
no,
things.
but and that's why I'm continuing with this, because when you and others said no, that's too extreme. I thought, and if you have any argument why Hitler and Trump are not or should not be compared, send it to me.
Oh, I think the biggest one
So
is
I
like
can examine that as well.
to me, it's the Jonah Goldberg quote. Hitler could have repealed Obamacare. That's the
Well,
difference. Is that
yeah,
I think Donald Trump is lazy and dumb. I actually
yeah.
think Hitler was kind of dumb on some stuff, but he was kind of a tyrant and had a mob of people that were willing to violently
I
enforce
don't think
his
Hitler was
will.
a dummy.
Well, you
I
look at the
think he was
military
arrogant.
strategy. Yeah, but I mean,
He was arrogant.
well, yeah, but you can be arrogant and smart. Like I think that um, someone like Tucker Carlson, who is I think deceiving and maybe is lost his way, but he's smart and
But in that case, and I agree,
yeah,
but in that case, I think his smarts outweighs his ego
it's
because
hard to say sometimes, but yeah,
yeah, oh, I know. You preaching to the choir there, Reverend.
yeah,
But my point being is that he has the business sense for what he does that it keeps he's patient. I guess he has a level of patience where he can keep the ego in check to keep the ratings moving up.
yeah. You're probably right there, and I think that's what scares me less about Donald Trump. This is not me trying to downplay the things he does. It's that
No, right?
I think he's kind of dumb and lazy, frankly. And this is not me just trying to insult Trump. This is me saying that he can't focus on something for long enough to
That's what I was going to say.
accomplishment.
Not as much the dumb and lazy is that he's got shiny object syndrome.
Yes, it's a little bit of that too, but it's also that is I think mostly due to laziness. It's it's that and that's the tariff thing. I think he just willy-nilly decides and then he's talking out loud before he's thought about anything, and that's the difference. Hitler had a strategy the whole time, and
Right.
I think that that's very clear. I mean, as far as you look at his rise to power, and it's very clear that he had a strategy of what he was doing, and he was playing politics well with the rest of the world and convincing them that he was not going to do what he was, yeah, and they all bought it. Everyone bought this thing from Hitler that he wasn't going to be this, going to start seizing other people's territory. And they were wrong to it. And the difference is with Trump is that he can't not be himself. He can't play politics in a way that would benefit him ever. He's not good at it. And so that's where I go. Trump has a lot harder time accomplishing the things he wants to accomplish. And what bothers me about that is that some of the things he wants to accomplish, I agree with, but he is so quick to make a decision and say, we're doing this, and then starts getting advice. The problem is, I think that this tariff stuff is the perfect example, is that he's
Yeah. And the firings.
yeah, the both. Yeah, you're right. It's like here's what we're gonna do, and then you have to walk it back because you realize the second you talk to, I don't know. I'm First of all, I think the most convincing thing is the stock market. I think that's really what this is all about because he can't argue with the stock market and he can't say
Even
the
though he's
stock
trying
market is
to.
fake news. He can't do it. He
Yeah.
knows he can't. It's the only thing he can't change the narrative on. And I think that's mostly what's convincing him. It's just weird that he hasn't learned the lesson now twice. And the same thing keeps happening.
That was my question is who's advising him?
No one. I
Literally,
mean, after
literally,
he says
not,
stuff, they
maybe not
are.
every, but almost every, at least maybe every economist worth their salt said that one, these foreign countries don't pay the tariffs, the people do.
Right.
And two, the tariffs were going to cause inflation. And three, all of his economic policies were going to cause inflation.
Yeah. Now, I
And
mean,
he
there
did
there
them
is a
all anyway.
I do want to be. I think it is worth saying the difference, though. I haven't seen that all economists think it will cause inflation. Almost everyone thinks it will cause. Everyone thinks it will cause prices to rise. It won't.
Yeah.
There's a difference between
Yeah.
inflation and
Fair.
prices rising. As far as we're looking at year over year inflation. We're looking at the interest rates. We're looking at things like that. If the prices of, for example, oil, like we don't even include gas and groceries and certain things in. All right, we do. What do we not include in the consumer price index? There are some things we don't include because they're volatile all the time. Like eggs
Right.
would not be part of that because the eggs are not being affected by economic tariffs. They're being affected by a bird flu. And so the consumer price index does a good job at actually weighing this stuff well. So, I mean, but you're right. Every economist says prices will rise. Like it's just inevitable. And I think most people don't understand the complexities of it. And Donald Trump certainly doesn't understand the complexities of it. So what happens is he goes, here's what we're doing. And then the automakers come in and go, you don't understand. These parts go to and from here, Canada, and Mexico 8 times before we
Yeah.
finish a Ford F-150 or whatever. And it's not because it's because, the Canadians are good at building this specific part, and we build these other things at a plant in Mexico because that's where it makes the most sense. And because of the trade deal you signed and said was a wonderful thing in 2018, 2019, whenever he signed the replacement for NAFTA, he claimed that was a great deal. That was between us and Canada and Mexico. So it's just Canada and Mexico and United States companies coming to him after he says he's going to do tariffs to show him why it's a bad idea and why it will hurt them. It's unfortunate that he doesn't
I'm trying
get
to get a
their
word in
opinions
edgewise,
early.
Matt, to introduce you.
There's a weird echo, by the way.
There is an echo, and I would 100% guess I was going to join the stream and Blake would be talking.
Yeah.
Blake, it's good to see you. I missed you last week.
Yeah.
Why is there? Are you
we
hearing?
had to do all of it with. I had to fill in for you, so I had to filibuster Jurgs.
Did you do me proud? Yeah, I don't hear the echo anymore, Jurgs. It's good.
I think I did you proud. You're gonna have to ask Ken for that. Ken was there. Hey, Ken.
I was in things all day, so I didn't get to listen to it. But
you were in things all day?
I was in like meetings. Yeah.
Meetings make you sound so important.
I'm not important. Don't worry.
I'm not worried because we know.
We know.
I'm just kidding, man. I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
so what we're talking about.
Well, we were talking about tariffs and stuff, and Jurg's question was, do we think who is advising the president? I said no one is until after he's made a decision, and if he would talk to those people before he said the thing out loud, it would benefit him.
I want to say I disagree. I think this is actually a very strategic and thought out plan. And
my dad agrees with you.
Your dad agrees with me. Because your dad's a smart man.
He says he knows what he says that Trump knows what he's doing. He's testing the waters because he's going to keep going.
So what's the explanation for him doing it multiple times then, Matt? Because I feel like what's the point of saying they're on, they're off, they're on, they're off, they're on, they're off? That's the part that I go, I don't see the 3D chess here.
See, look, here's okay. Let's just first of all, let's frame tariffs. And I don't think that tariffs. Okay, let me just say first of all, before everybody goes, oh, Matt's like pro like getting make inflation and stuff like that. Inflation will happen because of tariffs, right? This is how it will work. It will put strain on businesses in the United States, businesses abroad, strain ally relationships. These are all things that we know. Okay, done. Matt is on the good side. Understands. Cool. But what other things that we need to point out is there are trade deficits that, and I think the India one is a very good example. There's 4% tariffs on India goods coming to America, something like, 15% going to India, especially when you have a GDP like India, where the average GDP is something like, I think, $2,400 per person per year. You really are cutting out a lot of people that are able to purchase American goods by having those tariffs in there. If you get rid of 15% and take it down to even trade, a balance of 4%, let's call it, then you open up the market to millions of people. Of a country of 1.4 billion people, it opens up to millions of people that could buy American goods. So I think that by looking at these trades and tariffs, we should probably look at it and go, hey, could we afford to put more on, say, or even our allies to go, can we negotiate a better deal where it's more equal between the two of us? That's number one. Number two is I think that when you do these trades, you saw how the market reacted. Trillions of dollars went out of the U.S. market. Trillions of dollars went out of Canadian. I mean, not trillions, but billions of dollars out of these different markets. This just shows already that there's going to be pain. Who wants to do the pain? Now, it's easy to go over to a negotiating table that says, hey, everything's hunky-dory, we're good. And then we're just not going to back off and there's going to be no change. Now, if you want to say, hey, we could cause pain, we can absorb the pain a lot better. We're the United States of America. Yeah, it's going to suck for millions of Americans, but it ain't going to suck as bad for like for you guys. And then to take them off, it just shows, hey, we could do this. Trust me, it's going to hurt. Now let's go and let's talk about it. So I do think that there is a strategy behind that. Third thing I do want to say is that I'm not saying, and I have a whole theory about tariffs and what I think is happening. We can go into that if you want to, but that's a little bit me of rambling for maybe 5 minutes, and I'm going to have to pull a filibuster Blake here. But the other thing is that tariffs have been used by other countries, and I've said this on the show multiple times. Tariffs have been used to prop up their industries and in different ways. And China is an amazing example of how they use tariffs to keep everybody out, while strategically allowing different companies to come in and have joint partnerships with China to build industry, to employ people, to make cars or whatever you want, to make products, and then build up their industry so they sell China-owned products. And so, yeah, it might have a BMW label on it, but that was made in Dongbei. Yeah, it might be a Volkswagen label on it, but it's made in Shanghai. Yeah, I know. So it's like that. And then now, who is the manufacturing industry of the world? It's China, and it's not because they didn't do this strategically. So I see where they could be going with this. I doubt. The only thing I do doubt about this whole thing is, does anybody have a unified long-term vision? But I do think that this isn't a, I think, willy-nilly, hey, let's just throw things at a wall and see what sticks. I don't think that that's the case.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fairly true. I think the difference that I see is that there's a yeah, I mean, tariffs are complicated. Obviously, you got to dig into the weeds of a lot of stuff. But we're specifically talking about Canada and Mexico, those tariffs very specifically is that Trump signed his new beautiful trade deal in his first term. So my point is, what's changed since then? Nothing. The only thing that's changed that is, first of all, using fentanyl as an excuse to put tariffs on Canada is outrageous. Less than 1% of the fentanyl is coming through Canada. It's a Mexico and China problem specifically. And this is why you haven't heard me complaining as much about the China tariffs, because I think there are legitimate things that we're saying we want behaviors to change with China. The reason I don't see any strategy here is because he keeps saying there's nothing they can do to change these tariffs. Both times he said that. They're happening no matter what. And within a couple of days, he says, they gave me what I want. And keep in mind, this time, the pause for Mexico, he hasn't even told us what it is. He hasn't given us any reason.
See, I think okay. So my whole first things first is I would have to look at like the different industries in Canada or Mexico to understand like where there's imbalances. One thing I have noticed, and I was being reported on my show, Daily Crypto News, is that there is a banking imbalance. Now, this is just one example. I don't know how much money is this, but U.S. banks it's very hard for U.S. banks to do full services in Canada, but Canadian banks are able to come over here allegedly. So
that's a regulation problem.
That's a regulation thing, but still, even though it's a regulation thing, that is still an imbalance that says, "Hey, why can your banks come over here? My banks can't go over there." We could talk about that with tariffs.
Example of that, TD Bank is Canadian.
Yeah, but 16 of our major banks are in Canada. It's not.
But with restrictions. Okay, I got it. Fine. We could, again, to go through the details. I'm just using that as an example.
Yeah, but I get
what industries do you want to figure out? Maybe there are imbalances that aren't really fair, and there are some things to talk about. So I'm not too sure about that. But what I will say is that, what was your question was about taking the tariffs off, right?
Well, it was just like, why is he on again, off again, on again, off again? If there's a plan here, especially because, like I said, the Colombia thing, for example, is how you would use tariffs. You'd say, we're sending this plane of criminal migrants that we don't want anymore. And Colombia said, we're not going to take them. And he said, great. If you don't take them, I'm going to do a 25% tariff. And if you don't take them a week from now, it's going to be 50. That's using tariffs as a stick to say, do what we want you to do. The problem is he's not being clear about what he wants Canada and Mexico to do, because there's been these pauses have come with the first pause, all the things that Canada and Mexico promised them, like troops on the border and fentanyl czars, that was already promised in November and December. So these were things that he already had from them before he was even president. And and he didn't get anything this time either, from what I understand. It's just like, well, I had a good call with the president of Mexico. That's essentially what he said is the reason he's putting the pause on it. I understand the auto stuff, but to me, that's where I go, how did you not know this was going to be a thing where the automakers were going to come to you? That's why I'm saying it's like ready, fire, aim is how Trump's doing it. And if he,
But he said that, and we'll talk about this later, he said that in his Tuesday night pep rally, that he talked to the big three and they were all for these tariffs.
Yeah, I think you got to. I think
that's not the case.
I think that it's just not true. I think that there's no way he talked to the auto. He's lying, which he does often.
I mean, unless there's a difference between the auto industry and the unions and the CEOs. I mean, you could talk to the CEO and they're like, actually, this could be a good thing. Was leverage these guys and grind them down, and then they're like, hey, this is public now.
Yeah, nah. I doubt the CEO. I don't think anyone would have gone with it. I mean, because this is going to raise the price. What's really incredible about it is that it will raise the price of United States on manufactured autos, and you'd still be able to import a Kia for no tariff. And that's what's crazy is that this was going to hurt. Like, clearly, if you just thought about it for 2 seconds, because there's so much border crossing because of the trade deal that he signed in 2018, 2019, whenever his first term. Anyone could have, any like one with a basic economic knowledge would have known that. And that's my point, is that he is like firing before he talks to even, I think, his staff and his advisors and the people that, I think aren't dumb necessarily around him. Like you said, he could have brought in, I just don't believe that he talked to them, because they would have known that this was going to raise prices. They would have known that that would have put them at an unfair advantage to compete with Japanese and Korean and, other automakers that we import their cars. And all of a sudden there's like nothing, there's not a tariff on that, but there is on their stuff. That would be hard to justify.
Okay, so two things I do want to mention. First off is I think that, okay, first I really don't want to get in the circular conversation of the Trump not doing the thing that he says he's going to do. I mean, this was literally 4 years of his first term. Now we can debate on how much harm or good he caused, but like the only one thing I can say is the biggest effect of the Trump administration is and will be and was that we keep talking about the guy about things that he says he's going to do and he doesn't do the thing. And I don't want to. I just really don't want to do that. Let's see what happens.
I agree.
Let's see if he does the thing.
Yeah, I'm with you.
But is anybody recognizing a pattern here?
Yeah, he does it. Yeah, he absolutely does it for just media and keeping his name in the news. Like none of this happens. None of this happens in any significant way, or happens in such a weak, lackluster way. There's nothing really solid and concrete about what this guy really does. So I'm not. We keep taking the bait, and then it enrages Democrats, and Democrats are like, ah.
Well, no,
and
but
then everybody's like, ah. And it's
but
like,
I will say this:
he hasn't done the thing, though.
I think you're right about, for the most part, the things he says. Like when he says the like Maragaza plan, for example, I'm like, yeah, let's not talk about it. It's dominating the news cycle, and we're giving him what he wants by talking about something that he's never going to do because A, it's impossible, and B, he's too lazy to actually follow through on it. The problem with these tariffs is that because Congress has I did actually some research on this week that's kind of interesting. I learned more about like sort of the abdication of Congress's powers of tariffs specifically to the president. And the problem there is that he has the power to do it, and he has been doing it. And Scott Lincecum at the Dispatch, and he's at I think AEI he's at Cato, and he had a good article. I can't find it now, but basically the estimates from the first term tariff threats, some of which he didn't go through. The estimates are that it caused something like, it's like $50 billion in less investment in United States companies, and less of companies doing things that they would have done unless they had, if they would have been reassured that they weren't like going to get slapped with tariffs. Most of this stuff that the markets don't like and that business don't like is the uncertainty. And I think that that's where he's really harming himself, is that yes, what he says doesn't matter. I don't want to like take the bait like Democrats do. At the same time, when he talks about tariffs, that is causing economic harm, even if he doesn't do anything, because the markets react to it.
Look, in the crypto industry, it's the same thing. He's talking about Bitcoin reserves and buying. And honestly, here's the thing: is it's all trading the markets, bro. And it's like, so there's nothing. If the fundamentals don't change, the only thing you're doing is messing with people's emotions, and they trade on those emotions. And so it's great for the traders, and it's not really bad for the markets, in my opinion, because there's nothing substantial. And if there's nothing substantial and fundamentally changing, then it doesn't really matter for the market. What he is doing, for example, the Bitcoin crypto market, is he announced his strategic reserve. Everybody traded on the fact that the United States is going to use taxpayer money to start making a crypto reserve. And he's like, nah, we're just going to keep the stuff that we have already. And everybody's like, oh, and so who actually lost? The people who were trading on their emotions, that they think they're going to do the thing that he's not going to do.
Yeah.
And so nothing has changed fundamentally with that. Nothing has changed with Bitcoin or regulations or who's involved or anything. Nothing has changed besides that the United States is now going to keep it instead of selling it. And so where's the harm? The same things with the markets. We're going to do tariffs. We're going to trade tariffs. Everything's going to fall to shit. And then nothing happens. And they're going to spend the tariffs. And everybody's like, oh, you hurt the markets. No, he hurt your feelings.
I don't think you can do that many times, though. I think that at some point you're causing so much uncertainty that businesses are going to stop hiring people, for example.
Uncertainty is feelings.
They already are.
No, but uncertainty is when you have to forecast. It's important.
We're talking about later is that with the job cuts in the federal market, the federal government, these people, these scientists, these park rangers, these very skilled but very pointed, educated people have nowhere to go. because the private sector has very much so slowed on hiring. We'll hit that when we get back. We got to take a break. Um, you're listening to Up the Middle. It's Friday Fights. We're actually getting along today, so maybe I'll retitle it Friday.
Oh, just
Friendship
wait, bro.
or something like
Don't
that.
don't
Maybe
don't
that's
don't
something
jinx it.
coming. Oh, all right. You're listening to Up the Middle on the Massive Media Network. Take a break. We'll be back right after this. What are you doing later? I'll tell you what I'm doing. I'm going to the gym, but not just any gym. Momentum Fitness and Wellness. Walk right up to the door. There's a QR code on the door. You can sign up right there. You've got no excuse. But not only that, their equipment is amazing. It's kept up well. It's expanded. There's stretching area. There's CrossFit. There's hardcore training. A dedicated area for stretching, dunk tanks, sauna, everything you need to get that Hernando beach body or keep your Clearwater beach body. You can train with your shirt off, you can scream, you can yell, and you won't be intimidated either. Go to Momentum Fitness and Wellness on US 19 in Bayonet Point, Jasmine Estates. Build the momentum. Rumble. We're fair and balanced, unlike some other network that used to use that tagline. We try to present arguments from both sides. That's why we got both Blake and Matt today. And throughout the week, we have Jane, a little more left-leaning on Monday, and Philip, a little bit more right-leaning on Monday, but also our destinations. And by the way, if you saw in the chat, our radio show page, Up the Middle Radio Show, is the only Facebook destination that we go live to any day of the week. The other pages, my personal page, 40 seconds is up. My personal page, the other Up the Middle page for translating Trump, and all the others have the Mastiff Media video player pinned to the top of it. So people can see that more easily, and allows us to have other destinations for like Twitch and other places with our Restream account. One of those destinations is Rumble. Just like YouTube, we're also on Rumble, and you can be too. If you're a content creator, go to rumble.com/register/Yergs Media. Yergs Media is what we used to be before Mastiff Media came along. Go to rumble.com/register/Yergs Media. Sign up today for a discount. And yes, if you do that, we do get a piece of that. Let us know whether you have any questions. Go to news@yergs.com and we can help you through that. All right, let's bring out the guys. Bring the guys back out. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure something stayed back. We were talking about the tariffs and effects on the country. And my question is, oddly enough, I'm agreeing with Blake. If he slowed down on the first one and gave this month delay, if these are so great, remember, tariff is his favorite word.
Yeah. It's better than love.
Why are they all of a sudden not so important?
Yeah, and that's the inconsistency, and that's because he doesn't really even understand how tariffs work. And so the problem is that when you have someone with that little understanding of it, and you're right, it's like, we're doing these no matter what because we have to, because it's unfair to the country if we don't. And then when he rescinds them, he also gets the cheers. It doesn't make any sense, and it is going to have I disagree with Matt here in that it's going to have long-term consequences, even if they don't go into even if they're not applied at this point, because no one's going to sign a trade deal with us because they know they're worth nothing now, because the deal he signed in his first administration, he's already going back on. And it's clear that, like, who's going to want to do business with the United States when they go, look, there's the way their government is set up is one guy in the White House can declare an emergency and completely upend our economic ties. And so it will be smarter for them to start, working with people that are actually reliable, and like it will end up in less trade happening in the United States. And I think what most people do not understand, everyone looks at this as like, well, that's unfair, and they do that, and this free trade has made all of us richer. Like, the reason the United States is such a rich country and the reason stuff is so cheap is because we trade with people. Trade is a net benefit to consumers always. And yes, you can look at the margins, and I'm all for using tariffs in certain situations when, like I said, someone is doing unfair business practices. I think China is actually doing unfair trade a lot of times, and they're doing, illegal things like stealing our businesses' intellectual property and stuff, and then trying to sell it and make it in their market and sell it in their market. And so they're doing stuff that we want to say that's bad behavior. We want that to stop. But Donald Trump has not pointed successfully, in my opinion, to any bad behavior that Mexico and Canada are doing that justifies
There
the
isn't
tariffs.
any.
And so
There's
that's the problem, is that our allies are going to go, well, why would we trade with the US? Like, why would I make this huge investment to get into that market? And then they might just pull the rug out from
Look,
underneath us.
like I agree with you. I agree with you. Here's the thing. It's a feckless, weak Congress,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I keep saying this.
Yeah.
Congress is the blame here. It's not the executive branch. The executive branch is fighting for more power. They all fight for more power. That's why there's
Yeah.
3 of them, and you're supposed to balance each other out. And Congress is basically abdicating his power, and they're allowing all this to happen. So let's first put the blame where blame is. The second point to you,
Yeah.
I have 3 here, really quick. The second point to what I want to say is, can we just please stop saying that Trump doesn't know what tariffs are? I think that's just the guy has
he
made
doing
a
what
living
he's
in his
doing?
organization, and because he has other motives. If you want to talk about power grabs, if you want to talk about bullying, if you want to talk about, but don't say the
Well-
guy doesn't know, because look, the guy obviously has made his money by manipulating regulations and laws. It might not be good products, but he knows how to to mess with the tax structure and mess with real estate structures, mess with regulations, mess with city planners and zoners. He does not.
Well, but then do you think he's
stupid.
just lying when he says that, like, other countries pay the tariffs? Or do you think
I think it's politically, that's what he's doing, because the people don't know, and so he's Trump says it, the people don't know. Next thing you know, he has a populist support because of the thing that he said. So I think that's the thing. He's not, no politician's going to come out and say, like, hey guys, we're going to do some tariffs, and by the way, you're going to pay the bill. That's why Mexico was going to pay for the wall.
No, but that,
I mean, we know, don't say he's dumb, because that puts him in a position where we're just saying, oh, he's just so dumb. He's not dumb, and that makes us less powerful, because we keep thinking we're talking to a dumb guy. He's not a dumb guy.
I don't believe he really understands how tariffs works. I don't think he knows.
I don't, and I think that if somebody believes that he doesn't believe or know what tariffs are, is that they're underestimating their opponent. If this is what they're looking at him as an opponent, they're underestimating their opponent, and they're gonna get knocked out, because you don't do that. Anyway, so I don't think so. And number 3, can we please stop calling it free trade? Strategic regulated trade is what we do. It's not free trade. And so all these tariffs and all these little numbers that we're talking about, different countries that did this, and cars coming from here and coffee coming from here, is all strategic by Congress or the government or whatever, with tax incentives, not tax incentives, with some kind of trade policy or equilibrium. It's strategic regulated trade. It's not free trade. So let's stop thinking that we free trade with people.
Well, I mean, I think that what we call, but like, for the most part, what we do call it free trade, what we did with Mexico and Canada, by like having a
Yes, because we're wrong, because we're deluding ourselves to think that we're free at doing the thing, but we're not free to do the thing. And so all of these things that we're talking about is more ways to strategically place regulations in ways of trade to get the best deal.
But I would say that
that's what
I would say that I am actually
about.
for more free trade. I'm for freer trade. Yeah.
Me too. But don't call this free trade. Nothing that we do here is free trade. With the taxes, with the levies, the shipping, with the tariffs, all this stuff is not free trade. What you can and what you cannot export or import, this is not free trade. So can we please stop diluting ourselves that America is about free trade?
An interesting thing about, you brought up Congress, and I looked into this a little bit more this week because I was doing some research and stuff. So the interesting thing about Congress, obviously they did abdicate, the Constitution does not say that the president has the ability to lay tariffs at all. It's all in Congress. But Congress eventually said, I mean, this goes way back to the Constitution being written, and basically James Madison was like, I don't think we should have industry or product specific tariffs, because that's going to capture Congress to like they're going to get lobbied by that specific industry, and they're going to give their buddies deals, and it's going to turn into corruption really fast, which is absolutely what happened over the next century and a half. But
100%.
then when they did give it to the president, some of those powers, they put a legislative veto in the bill. So there are like over 200 laws that they said, here's some executive powers that you can have for emergencies so that you can move quick in times of emergency, but we can legislatively veto if we want to. The problem is that then the Supreme Court, I think, correctly points out that that's not constitutional, because that's not the legislation's veto over the executive branch is a 2/3 is they've got to get a veto proof majority to be able to override a veto by the president. And so if you can't have the legislative branch say we can veto what the executive branch does, because the Constitution doesn't set it up that way. The problem is the way the Supreme Court ruled, it just basically made that part of all those laws invalid. So now what you end up with is Congress having given the president emergency powers without the ability to check him at all on what's an emergency. And so Trump is using fentanyl as the excuse for the emergency now, but the only remedy Congress has is to try to change that law. Now, here's where they could absolutely do something, Matt, because you're right. All they would have to do is write a law that says Congress gets to, and by the way, people have tried to do this. The last one was in 2021. Basically, we can do a joint resolution to after you declare an emergency, you've got X amount of days, and then Congress has to decide if that's still an emergency or not. They are required to vote on it. And if it says, yes, it's still an emergency, you can still use those emergency powers. But if Congress says, no, that's no longer an emergency, or it wasn't an emergency in the first place, the president no longer has that power. That way you wouldn't have to rescind all of the executive branch powers, because there are situations where we need the president to act quickly. Now, I would argue it's never with tariffs. It is on things like we get attacked or something where, the president we expect them to act quickly. Right. But I think that Congress, all they have to do right now, literally, is say, hey, we get to declare. If you declare an emergency, we get to verify that that's an emergency or not within 30 days, and we have to do it. It would force people to vote against their party in power sometimes because they go, but again, they're not wanting to jealously guard their power. So Congress could absolutely fix this right now, but it's not entirely their fault the way the Supreme Court, like I said, I think that's the correct decision in the sense that it's not constitutional for the legislation to have a veto over the executive branch.
Jurgs, you got anything on this?
I've been in the chat, managing chat, and
okay, so I'll reply to Blake really quick then.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I agree with you. I agree with you. That's a very interesting point, that because of the partisan split of Congress right now and party loyalty, or if you want to call it party loyalty or just no ballsism.
Yeah, that's what I would call it. Yeah.
That because of the way it's split, you can't get to 2/3 majority, so therefore it's almost absolute power. And that's a very, very interesting point.
And that's what they'd have to get to even write the thing that says we could overwrite the.
Just because I said you had an interesting point doesn't mean I said you could talk now. Hold on.
What do you think that's going to change in the midterms? Are things getting so bad that the Democrats might finally be inspired to pull their heads out of their asses?
I don't think it's possible that they get enough majorities that they could get 2/3. Because remember, they'd have to get a veto-proof majority.
Not 2/3, but at least enough where they can further stall him.
But they can't right now because he has the powers to do this.
But what I'm saying,
he's talking about
well, I know, but they'd still, at that point, if they passed a law and they don't have 2/3 majority to go along with it, he can just veto it. Yeah. That's been the problem this whole time.
All these firings have been ruled illegal.
Not all, but some.
Many or most have been ruled illegal. So those people are coming back, and we've got, as we said, you said feckless and gutless, and I said the ballless bitches are not doing anything. If that changes to at least a majority, not the 2/3, but at least a majority, there can at least be something that they're trying to get done. If he vetoes it, he vetoes it. But at least in 2028, the Democrats will then have something to run on.
I don't think the Democrats are, in my opinion, Democrats aren't even putting out anything right now that they can run on, because they're not acknowledging a lot of the things that the people do want out of these situations. And so until they start acknowledging, I think not the will of the people. I don't want to say that. I guess the temperature of the national of the people right now nationally, which they are not, then I don't think that they can run anything. But I do want to go back. Actually, never mind. I forgot what I was going to say. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, we do got to move on to the other one then. I got to check the list now. What's next?
While
Depart-
you're transitioning, I mean, like, go ahead.
well,
Sorry.
I was just going to say the Department of Education, and he wants to dismantle that. Yet Linda McMahon, his Secretary of Education, has done a little bit of homework on the issue and has agreed and admitted that it was something that was started by Congress. He can't just dismantle it without the help of Congress. Now he'll probably get that help. But if she or he or they clown around for the next 2 years, and that balance changes to at least the minimal Democratic majority, he's not going to accomplish that either.
Well, they won't get 7 votes in the Senate to get rid of it now. They have majorities, but you got to get 60 votes in the Senate, and they don't have that. So it's definitely not possible.
No.
Right now.
Okay. Well, you and I discussed a couple of weeks ago what exactly does the Department of Education do, and I think you were actually in favor of dismantling. Was that right?
I would be fine with most of the programs that it does. It could be in other things. Like, for example, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me for the Department of Education to manage college loans because they're not like the Treasury Department or the IRS that deals with that kind of data all the time and those kind of numbers and finances and things like that. So to me, there are several things in the Department of Education that make more sense to be in other agencies. You're going to have some sort of thing that passes the dollars along to states, even if you do them in block grants. Even if you say, here's the funding, we're giving it to you as a state, and there are no strings attached, which is actually how I would like the funding to be. You still have to have some organization that does that, but it could be Treasury. I mean, I'm sympathetic to those arguments.
Losing 30,000 people in the IRS, and how many others through other departments within the other sections within the Treasury. Where is this responsibility? A leaner government. It doesn't make it's going to be more efficient.
Right. And that's what's interesting is that I think we get the two things confused too often. I've said over and over again, there are probably some agencies to be more efficient will need more funding and people working there. Like the
Correct.
IRS is not necessarily one of those, but I do think that we need more processing for example, for immigration. We absolutely need that. That is something where if we want the government to be efficient, we need more money and funds there. And same thing with there's a law enforcement element there. If you want the Department of Justice to be able to go after crimes, they need funding. They need agents. They need prosecutors.
And
so
I shared this. I don't know which day, so I don't know if you guys heard it, but I shared this a few weeks ago. Since September 11th, what is he doing? Are you working out again? What do you got going on? Is that a stash? He jumped off camera with
I was getting my daily vitamins, guys.
All right, I thought you were prepping the pipe or something. After September 11th, the directors of the FBI and the CIA
prepping the pipe. Yeah. Is that some?
You get a little weed.
Oh, I thought you were talking about like some, I don't know, glory hole something. I don't know. I didn't know what you're talking about, man. It's prepping my pipe.
No, I meant that literally, as in like smoke some bud. Right after September 11th,
I don't smoke, man.
The directors of the FBI and the CIA were brought before Congress and had their asses chewed for letting this happen. And they turned it right around on Congress and said, "This is your fault. If we were better funded, we would have been able to stop this." And Congress apparently never heard that before, at least to that degree. So they thought, okay, well, yeah, what do you want? And they got a lot more funding and toys, et cetera, et cetera. During the Bush administration alone, George W., they stopped more than 100 attacks on the U.S. that were of a 9/11 proportion or greater that nobody ever knew about. And so you're right. You can throw money at something, and it actually have a positive effect.
Within reason, although I think with education specifically is an area where we've been throwing more and more money at it, and the results have gotten worse and worse and worse. And I think it is time to drastically change up how we think about education in America because it's not working. The test scores are terrible. We are falling behind in math and
But
reading, and
that's also that's not just. I mean, I think maybe it's time to put more control at the federal level. And I'm not saying that's the right answer, but I'm just saying I'm down here in Florida, and since I've been here, Ron DeSantis has given more power to the parents, who, by the way, are not professional educators. The scores have gone down. When I fully adopted Zach, I said, "You're not going to the public school here. One, it's not safe. Two, you ain't going to learn anything. You're going to wind up teaching them." So I homeschooled him his senior year. He took a year off, and he's still in college and doing well.
yeah, but here's the thing that sucks about that is that you probably didn't get funding to do that.
I
And
was told I was going to get, and there's another problem why I think it could be centralized and made federal. I was told by the DeSantis administration, because adoption was actually his pet project. I was told I was going to get all kinds of funding. When they found out I was a single parent and got the suspicion as to why mom isn't around, that disappeared real quick.
see, I don't think we should have anything
To
in the
this
federal
day-
government that controls it, but I do think
To
we
this
should
day,
get
I
money to
haven't been told
parents.
why. To this day, I haven't been told why I got that funding cut.
Yeah, I mean, I think that funding should go to parents. I think basically any money we're not spending that goes directly to children should not be spent. We're spending too much on administrators. I mean, there's all sorts of things wrong with education that I think we could fix. I think it should be fixed at the local level. I do not think the federal government can handle this. But I do think if you're going to spend money, I think the money should follow the taxpayers and the parents. And I think that you need competition in schools. We need public schools and private schools and charter
You're in favor
schools
of,
and
like,
homeschool.
you're in favor of the what was it, the voucher system?
Yeah, I mean, in a
No.
like basically I think that the parent should be able to choose where his kid goes to school, and if whether that's private or charter or public or whatever, I think the funds should travel with the parents. And look at this is wildly popular, and charter schools are wildly popular with minorities. The very people that people say that will get left behind here are the people going, I would love to be able to choose the school I go to. And so you're seeing states start to do this in the last couple of years. You've had a lot more kind of school choice things, and it's not people call it vouchers. Everyone's doing different things for sure. Most of them are, it's not, I would like it to be completely controlled by the parents. Like I said, if they want to spend that money on homeschooling, I'm okay with that. I think that we need to have, like I said, there needs to be a wild shakeup here, but there are some misconceptions about what the Department of Education actually does. They don't do as much as people think they
So-
do.
So me and my friend were talking about this, and I think that this is the best solution. Is the Department of Education, when it was created, had a specific mandate and role. It was created for a very specific reason or specific reasons, and I think probably every so often every bill should have, and this is I think this is a great idea. Should just have an expiration date.
Absolutely.
Like this just expires, and then after you expire it, you can re-up it. But you can't just re-up it by saying we're going to extend this. You have to, the bill ends, then you have to redo the bill. And that means, like, even if it's the same bill, it has to go to a vote again and then you will have a debate about the bill. So I think the Department of Education, just because Congress made it, doesn't mean that it just should stay there in perpetuity.
Totally
as
agree.
it is. It should expire. They should relook at the funding, relook at the mandate, relook at the direction, relook at everything, and then Congress should decide if we're going to have a Department of Education, and if so, what does it look like? What does the funding look like? What do they do? And it should happen with everything, not just Department of Education, but everything. It should just expire.
I agree.
and
Everything should sunset.
figure
I
it
think
out.
that would be a genius way to do it because they could no longer what they're doing now. Well, first of all, and that goes to the efficiency thing too, Matt, is that right now there's like a civil rights department in every one of these departments, in education, in DOJ, in all of these different things. There's these civil rights violations. It's like, why don't we just have one agency deal with all the civil rights violations across the board and be the experts at that? We're being really inefficient by these things get bloated and bloated and more bloated as they, and the Department of Education's been around for 50 years now. So it's
Right, with all totally different mandates. Okay, so that's my number one thing. I think everything should sunset. Number two, and number two is that I'm having a problem agreeing or disagreeing with the voucher thing. while I do agree with and maybe I'll put this up to you guys. While I do agree with school choice and competition, I kind of feel like tax dollars for public schools should not be going to private schools. Um, but and one thing that these vouchers do not do is allow school choice within the public school system. And so what you do, and I think it's probably the same in every state, is how it is in my state. If you live in a city, you have to go to those schools. You can't go to the places next door. You can't go to another school system. And this is why inner city schools are liking the vouchers, or allegedly liking the vouchers, is because if you take this and go out of maybe a bad school to a good school system, I don't know why there isn't more competition within public schools. Now, I am totally for having the voucher system. Sorry,
Yeah,
Ross.
no, do it when we come back
15
because we're
seconds.
going to lose KHP, and I got to make sure that
Okay, go ahead.
they
Sorry.
know where they can get us. This is the first hour. We're going to lose you on American One Radio and probably ZQR, although they're playing a previous episode anyway, and also 1400 AM and 1071 FM KSHP Las Vegas. Come over to Yerg's Radio, YERGZ radio.com, or go to Mastiff Media and find out where all the different little places you can get the video feed for everything that I've got to try to get rid of this overlay. There it is. Go to mastiff.media and find everything where you can get rid like I just did to the guys, where you can find where the video feed is. We got to take a break. You guys can get your vitamins, refill your coffee. When we come back, we're going to finish up with the Department of Education discussion and then move on. What do we got next? The federal job cuts in the private sector, and also finish up today with a pep rally. You're listening to Up the Middle. This is the Mastiff Media Network. We'll be back after this. What are you doing later? I'll tell you what I'm doing. I'm going to the gym, but not just any gym. Momentum Fitness and Wellness. Walk right up to the door. There's a QR code on the door. You can sign up right there. You've got no excuse. But not only that, their equipment is amazing. It's kept up well. It's expanded. There's stretching area. There's CrossFit. There's hardcore training. A dedicated area for stretching, dunk tanks, sauna, everything you need to get that Hernando beach body or keep your Clearwater beach body. You can train with your shirt off, you can scream, you can yell, and you won't be intimidated either. Go to Momentum Fitness and Wellness on US 19 in Bayonet Point, Jasmine Estates. Build the momentum. 1-888 yergs 844 gay LGBT. And until we actually have celebrities calling in, we're using the celebrity line 2. You can call us on Google Voice at 813-358-3866. Stay tuned for the analysis of this past Tuesday's pep rally, the State of the Union of sorts, that got one green kicked out. But when the other president had that same type of event, the other green got to stay. We should be able to get to that by the end of this next hour. Let's get back to the different options that we're creating for a better Department of Education, if it even stays at all. Why do you keep going down there?
All right, this new music is grooving, man. I was dancing. All right, I gotta go.
There you go.
All right, so I'm gonna continue on my thing about the vouchers really quick, and I want you guys' opinion.
Yep.
So just for the new hour for people, we're talking about school vouchers. School vouchers in the U.S. is that the government, the state government, usually would give you a sum of money to send your kids somewhere else outside of public schools because you paid into the taxes. It's your money, in air quotes. Then they give you the money to go somewhere else. And that could be private or in some cases homeschooled, but not all states is homeschooled. So one thing I don't like about this program is first of all, I don't think it should go to private companies. It's taxpayer money going to private companies for education. I would prefer them not just pay taxes and then they'll figure out how to use their money. Then the whole process of taking the taxes for the schooling and then taking that money from the government treasuries and put it into a private corporation. I just say, if you want to opt out on school taxes, I'd be more for that. Just opt out. But when it comes to like voucher programs, we don't have competition within public schools. If you're in like a certain city, you have to go to that city's schools. Even if you're, and I think there's a couple of things that I don't like about this. Number one is if you are like a divorced parent situation, dad moves across the border, even if it's the town next door, you might have to change schools because you live with dad, right? And so now you are your friends, whatever, and you can't just go to the other school because now you're out of their district or they don't have the same funds and you don't get the same. So, and there's no competition. So if you're in a place with a poor school system, the kids that are achieving well, even if it's a bad school system, there's great science talent, there's great sports talent, there's great whatever talent there that now can't just go say, hey, I want to go to the school with the best football team because I kill it. Or the best, STEM. So I think there should be more vouchers within the public school system than outside of it. So you create competition within the public school system. And I think that there should be public quotas of capacity for these schools. So for example, your school has 1,500 kids that can go to it, but there's only 1,200 in the school system. I think the school system and we're in districts should be prioritized. And then you have a 300 of I'm going to accept the best of the best that fits into my standards for my school. And it doesn't matter. The school board makes that decision. If it's I want the best STEM people or I just want more Black people, do whatever you want.
Whatever you want.
The school board makes that decision. And so I think it should be more trade within the schools.
Well, Oklahoma's works like that, just so you know. So you can do basically your tax money can go out of your district to another public school district. And so you can choose that, hey, the school district and the place that I live is not serving me well. I'm going to transfer to one of the other public school districts. And it's not actually, when we talk about vouchers, the money, it doesn't actually ever hit parents' hands. It's all done by this student lives in this district, but they're going to this school because they applied for this transfer, and therefore the funds go to that school. It's still going straight from the government to the thing. I disagree. I actually think that, like I said, we need shakeup. I do not mind private schools getting this money. I do not mind parents directly getting it if they're going to homeschool their kids. I do not mind it going to charter schools. I do not mind, because I just think we need a desperate shakeup. And I think that when you have the competition of two things specifically, you have schools that will need to compete for those dollars, and you have parents that obviously don't want to make the wrong decision for their kids. Most parents, obviously there are some bad ones, and I'm not pretending every parent is perfect, but most parents want the best education for their kid, no matter what. And this goes to minorities, this goes to poor people. That's why they overwhelmingly support charter schools and school choice, because they do live in areas where they don't have the mobility to be able to move to the area with the good school, but they might be willing to drive there every day. They might be willing to spend an hour in the car to take their kid to a good school, because they realize, most people realize, that education is the way out of poverty. Even poor people understand that. Immigrants
So
understand that.
I agree. I agree with that. Okay, so I agree with homeschool. I think that people's tax dollars, if they're not going into a school system, and again, I'm not committed on if tax dollars should. I don't like the monopoly on education. Like the government says, "Hey, we do education, so all your money is going to go to this education,
Right.
my education." And if you don't want to pay for this education, then well, too bad. And, oh, you're
Yeah.
old and your kids are graduated. Oh, that's too bad too.
Yep.
Everybody pays to my monopoly on education. I don't like that, and so I do like the fact that if I want to do education at home and homeschool, then I don't pay into the system. I'm not using that system. I'm not paying into it, and so I kind of agree with that. But then we go into the snowball effect of, well, what about roads? What about this infrastructure? I'm just going to talk about education right now.
Also, even in education, what about activities? Fortunately for me, Zach didn't want to be in the band or play sports, but he used to be a pitcher. What if he wanted to continue with baseball? How do I get him into a public baseball team when he's not going to that school?
Well, so that's another thing Oklahoma has, is there are vouchers essentially for extracurricular activities for homeschoolers. You apply for these vouchers and you can get, I think it's up to $900 a year if you homeschool your kids, from state funding that goes to paying for whatever extracurricular activities they want to do. They could do ballet at a private institution. And so that's where I go, I don't have a problem. People don't seem to have a problem with that. They go, yeah, that makes sense. We want them to be able to do those kind of extracurriculars. You can do it on rock climbing if you want to, for PE. Whatever you want to spend that $900 on, you can, as a family, decide what works for your kid. There's two reasons I love that. Is because, one, I think we need to treat kids more uniquely than we do. We have a great school that's right across from our church that is it's a public school, but I think it's technically a magnet. I can't remember the difference between them, but it's essentially a specialized school where everything is arts or science or STEM related. So you have to kind of pick a major when you get to high school, and you have to, like, so it could be piano, it could be engineering, but like you pick sort of a major and you're like really focused on that thing. And so it lets kids that are specialized in something that they have a really high interest in and be a little more specialized. I love that, because I want to see weird schools where I want to see weird artsy schools and weird science schools. And
I do too.
You know what I mean? I want there to be more unique.
At what point are students or kids too young to declare some sort of major? One of the things that drove me crazy was when I was at Penn State, I would see sophomores and juniors still undeclared.
Yeah.
How do you not know what you want to do by your junior year of college?
When you're spending a lot of money on that at the time to not be declared. I get changing it. I think that which is why I want kids to do that even earlier. My kid's going into middle school next year, and they have sort of an orientation next week where they get to learn about all the different electives. I'm like, look, middle school is a great time to try anything you have a slight interest in, and you will then figure out whether you like it or not. And if you don't like it, don't do it anymore. But by the time you get to high school, that should be more specialized.
In middle school, what back in my day was called junior high school in my district. This was 7th, 8th, and 9th.
Yeah.
Now it's 6th, 7th, and 8th, and the 9th graders go to the senior high. But I was the sports director at the TV station, and I was the editor-in-chief of the student newspaper at the same time.
Right. And so you figured out something that you enjoyed while you were
and then he goes to Empire Baseball
now
and
look at me today.
Service.
Yeah. And so,
Yep.
like
you don't have to know what you're going to do, guys. Like,
it does translate.
But point being, look at me today.
Right. But you should at least, like, you don't have to specialize to know what your lifelong career is going to be. Because honestly, I think the economy is changing in a way that it's not going to be like our parents that had a job for 40 years and then retired. That's just not happening anymore. What's normally happening now is we're needing to train Americans to be better learners for their lifetime. So you may change careers every 5 years the way technology is going to change it. And you need to be a lifelong learner. We're not teaching kids to be lifelong learners. We're not even teaching, 50-something percent
kids are. I don't think we are. I think the older generations aren't. The kids actually, I think, are.
Well, but I don't think we are specifically teaching them that well.
No,
I
I don't
think
think we
that,
are. But I
yeah,
think that's because education systems. I am not a big fan of public. I'm not a big fan of public schools. I hated school. I don't think they. But I advocate for them because I know a lot of people love them and they have done well with them. I didn't, and I just can't stand the authority of
no,
it.
I think they
It
need a
pisses me
shake
off.
up.
But I do want to go back to what you were saying about the vouchers in Oklahoma because I think you guys are doing it cool. So let me ask a question for both of you really quick. What you said is they're taking the money and then redistributing. The way that sounds to me is that I'm a parent. I've already paid for this. Therefore, I'm almost incentivized to send my kids to go do these extracurriculars, go to school, or whatever, because or whatever, pick a school or homeschool, or whatever, because the money's already gone. I better get these kids educated. That seems like the purpose of paying to the taxes, opposed to saying you can keep the money and why don't you just instead of vouchers just pay for it yourself, because you don't know that parents will actually do use that for education, and so you have a bunch of dumb kids running around. So it's almost like I personally, I think I'm more for the freedom for the parents to use the money as they will if they want to extract from that system. But it seems like Blake, you're more for the have them pay into the system and which forces them to use it.
Yes, because I don't trust that, especially when you're talking about, um, poor families. I mean, first of all, there's a lot of people with just absolutely terrible parents. And I
Yeah.
do think that we need to look out for those kids. And I think we need to try to give them good opportunities as well. And now that's where I think that we need to improve the way public schools work, because I think you're right,
Mhm.
Matt. I think most people feel the same way. It's like, we go to a public school, but we're transferred into it. It's not in where we live. We are transferred out of where we go. So the schools around us are not great. And because we're in downtown Oklahoma City. And so we transfer to another school district, but they have purposely tried to keep it small. So that's one thing that the schools can do. They can say, we only want our school to be X amount of size. And so we can refuse transfers based on, we have a cap of we're only allowing X amount of students in here. We don't want extra buildings. We don't want all that kind of stuff. So there is freedom there. They're not forced to take kids that they don't want. And because so much of this public school is transfer, something like 70% of the school is people that are transferred in, they have this stick that is, if you are not a good student, if you are a disturbance, if you cause problems, if you fight with people, we can kick you
You're
out
out.
because you're a
Yeah,
transfer.
100%.
Yeah.
And it forces parents and students to consider that they can get rid of you. And I think there need to be those kind of consequences in education in both directions. I think for the kids and for the parents, I think there also need to be those kind of consequences for the schools. If they're not educating
Agreed.
the kids, they need
Agreed.
to lose their funding and potentially close. Teachers need to be fired if they're bad performance teachers. And we don't want to get into the union stuff, because I mean that I think is really where a big problem is the teachers unions specifically. It's not the teachers, it's the unions. I think public unions are just kind of gross when you think about how they are essentially in charge of funding the elections of the people who are going to be their boss going forward. That doesn't seem like there's an actual check on them. And so I agree. I just think we need a massive shakeup, and I think schools should be more specialized. You cannot do that from the federal level. I think you can't even do that from the state level without going, what we're going to do is if a parent decides to send their kid to school, we're going to give you that money, and then we trust you to spend that money well. Because if you don't, and you don't
So
educate those kids,
that's
they're
what I
going to
was going
leave.
to ask you. That's what I was going to ask you about the voucher system that you have in Oklahoma, or if you know of anything like this anywhere. As a single parent, I get X amount of dollars to our gym class. Actually, he had two. One was boater safety, where we learned how to, the Coast Guard regulations for being on a
The
boat.
most Florida shit ever.
Yeah, that is
Yeah,
that is
yeah,
very
it was
Florida
awesome.
man of you.
Yeah.
Right outside that window sits $50,000 worth of jet skis
Yeah, and how to
that we
escape
know
a
how to
gator.
operate properly. And then the other class we had for physical education was the weight room. We went and worked out during the day, and that
Wait,
was his
are
gym
we
class.
not going to address that Jurg spent $50,000 on jet skis?
They're
Like,
expensive,
Two of
man.
them.
Jurgs,
And,
bro,
and,
They're
and
calm down.
crazy.
Buy Bitcoin.
they're
What are you doing?
hey, hey, if you want to go 70 miles an hour on the water, that's the way to do
But
it.
that's actually a perfect point to prove that why the federal government shouldn't be in charge of it. That makes sense in Florida. That would not make sense in Kansas. And so there
No,
are,
I mean, not jet skis, but I chose that because I homeschooled, and
yeah,
that was what I chose to be our phys ed
Well, yeah,
classes.
but
My point
that's
being,
what he's
if
saying.
I
Yeah.
got money, if I got
right.
money to pay for that Coast Guard class, if I got money to pay for a gym membership for his physical education, is there anything that you know of where I actually have to turn in a receipt saying that in fact is where the money went?
At least not in my understanding of the way it works here, at least, is that if you homeschool your kids or they do uh, private or charter or some sort of, I can't remember exactly how it all works now because it's changed a couple times. So don't quote me exactly on how this works, but it is a check that you get. It's a for that money, and then you are then supposed to spend it on those kind of things. But no, I don't think there's a
So,
now obviously if
and
they think you're doing it
here's my problem with
fraudulently,
that.
if you claim you have a kid you
Here's my
don't.
problem with that.
Yeah.
When I was a baseball umpire, one of the guys I umpired high school and American Legion baseball with was an accountant, and he would tell me about how he worked in the one particular section of the city of Reading, Pennsylvania, that was mostly Latino. And the first question he would ask his clients when they came back from the previous year, any new kids? Because they didn't realize, all they knew is that by having another kid, it was another deduction. They never realized it was also another mouth to feed.
Mm-hmm.
And all they're worried about is having that additional deduction at tax time. So I forget where I was going with that.
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying. There are people that abuse this. It's the same thing in like the foster care system. There are people that abuse it and are not using the money on the kids. They're using it on themselves and stuff. I think the problem is those are rare. This goes kind of to Doge doing waste, fraud, and abuse. There's waste, fraud, and abuse for sure. That doesn't mean you take a hatchet to the entire thing and say it can't work because there might be some waste, fraud, and abuse. I guarantee there is that goes on with any of these government systems, but it also happens in Medicare. It also happens in Social Security. It also happens in Medicaid. That doesn't mean you just go, you know what, we shouldn't do Medicaid at all because sometimes it's fraudulent. I think that's where I go. You've got to go that you got to say that most people are going to use it well. And I think when you give parents the power to choose that, you will see competition happen and you will see winners and losers. And most people are just desperately wanting their kid to not be at the loser school, that they want their kid to be educated and especially going to minorities. Again, minorities, poorer people, immigrants, especially, when the generation that has the kids was not educated, you see a common thing, especially with immigrants, specifically in the immigrant community, which we have a huge Vietnamese immigration community here. Most of my Vietnamese friends, their parents were, actually immigrated from Vietnam to here. And so all they cared about was their kid being educated. And you see that like in Asian culture specifically, they are by golly, you are going to be well educated and you are going to have a better life than I did. And unfortunately, that hasn't translated to all cultures and it doesn't translate across the board to all poor people. Cause unfortunately, some people are not educated enough themselves to understand the value of it. But that's where the state can step in and say, we want this for every kid. We want to see that every third grader is reading at the proper level or above it. We see these numbers dropping as a problem, not just for that kid, but we see it as a future economic problem for the country, for the state. And I'm all for specializing, even between states. Like Florida is going to have different education programs potentially than Colorado is,
100%.
even based just on
100%.
the industries that are in those states. Like we're going to have more
100%.
oil and gas stuff. Like we have, because we have a lot of that industry here. And so it makes sense to kind of train people for the jobs that are in the area they're in. Not that you have to say that's exclusively what you educate them on, but I think that we've got to allow people to get a little more weird. And I love that Democrats now are all for federalism because Donald Trump is the president and they're all of a sudden like states' rights and this should be a state issue, not a federal thing. I agree with them. I just wish more people would get on board with that all the time instead of only when their party's not in power.
Yeah, I'm 100% for federalism. The only time I'm not is when it comes to discrimination against people across borders, and that's when I personally draw the line. Like healthcare is a thing that should be universal across the U.S. You don't get different healthcare or from one state to the other. different outcomes of. I'm sorry, you can't like shopping at one store or another store, like or discriminating against different people in stores. Like that's just that's the only time when I start to going like, yeah, federalism is. I don't think a state should pass a law to say, hey, you can discriminate against black people or gay people or whatever, or white men in my shop. Or I just don't. That's not cool.
Although even there, I mean, we've had this discussion before. I kind of think that people will not support those kind of businesses, and it will work itself out, kind of like the schools would.
Yeah, but the problem is, and when you have certain communities, let's just say you do have a community, a very let's call it Christian white community that says, hey, we only allow, let's just call it Christian white men or whatever into the stores, and you do have tourist people or whatever coming in. You create a very bad situation for it, and it could be very popular in your town or in your state, but then it just turns into like, oh, well, we have this one town that is okay with it over there, and I don't know, man. It's just bad.
No, I don't think it should be. I don't think the government should be allowed to say discrimination is like we're like passing laws that say discrimination. I think that when businesses do it specifically, I think most people would stop going to those businesses.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, I think we're not talking about this, but I'm just going to go back to the gay cake thing.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care. Like, you make cakes. You make cakes, make me a cake and put 2 grooms on it and just shut the hell up. I don't care.
But why even cause the problem? Why not just go to the other bakery that would do it?
I want a freaking cake.
I know, but we talked about it. Would you be okay with a Jewish one?
I agree with
Yes, I would be okay with a Jewish one. I make cakes. No. I will make a cake for you. A Jewish cake, a Muslim cake. I don't give a damn what cake it is.
But are you okay?
A Palestinian cake, a Israel cake. I don't care.
I know, but what if? But I think the argument there is that you're asking people to go against their beliefs, and I don't believe you should be racist. But I think you have the right to
cakes. You said, don't make cakes.
It's going to work itself out. You said that it's going to work itself out.
Yeah.
How do we know to not support that place? I think of Joe. Welcome. See you on Instagram. How do we know not to support that place if it doesn't become a news issue? If I don't go in there, if Matt and I don't go in there and say, we want a cake for our wedding.
Whoa. Hold
on.
No. We weren't telling everybody this yet. We didn't tell everybody about our nuptials.
No, what I'm saying is that when it comes to these kind of rights, it's like, I don't think you should be racist. I think it's evil. But I also think you have a right, a First Amendment right to be racist. And so if you want to own a business and be racist, I think that it would get on the news. I'm saying I don't think the government should interfere with it necessarily, because I don't think that business would do well. Now, we are sort of hyper-polarized now where people are supporting things. They're trying to support only businesses that totally line up with them politically. I think that's crazy.
Yes.
Because that sounds
crazy. I don't want my chicken sandwich to be politicized.
Right.
Get a chicken
sandwich.
You know
but and so that's where I think it works itself out.
Spike Lee attended for whatever black student group at Penn State when I was there, and they were talking about the racism that happens from McDonald's, and he said, "Don't boycott McDonald's because of racism. Boycott McDonald's because their food sucks."
Yeah, like that's kind of the point. And I think that most businesses understand that they, need customers, and they don't really care what the customer looks like if they're paying their money. Now, I think in certain situations, like if you don't like, that's where I just go, whatever, refuse people. And that's where I also think, going back to the school thing, it would be kind of cool to be like, yeah, we're going to take the best of the best here, kind of treat it when those transfer processes, like we like people that are artsy, or we're a music focused school, or we're whatever the thing is that you are, it's okay to have guidelines around what that is. And for example, there are quite a few of the charter schools, for example, that one of their goals is it's economic. It's not based on race, but it is, we are going to have a certain percentage of this school be people that are very like at certain like poverty levels, right? Part of our school is going to be those kind of students, but we are going to handpick those students. We are going to say you need certain test scores, or you have to have certain, whatever it is, it's an interview process, whatever you want it to be. I think that's okay. But again, just let there be some freedom here. I think the problem with,
I'm sorry. I'm going back to the cake thing. I'm just bothered by this.
Yeah,
I'm bothered by,
okay.
I'm bothered by this because again, it's like the smoking.
Sorry, but I had no other example, honey. I had to just pull that one out.
Yeah, no worries, baby. I'll take it on you later. After a
Oh,
couple
boy.
beers, I'll show you what's up.
There we go.
Andrew
I'll
Tate
teach you to
style.
shut your mouth.
Yeah, Andrew Tate style.
Right. You're what are you 6'4"?
6'1".
You're 6'1". 6'1". What, about 240?
I just learned, and it's not a good 240 either. I just had a checkup yesterday. No, 2 days ago, from when I was sick about a month ago. And yeah, it's not a good 240. So when mom and dad leave next
So
week,
I'm
I'm back to
5'10".
gym hard.
I'm 5'10" and not lean but pretty lean 200. So I don't know, man. I could slap you around a little bit.
I'd
I'm not too
watch
sure.
this physical fight. I think it would be fun to
Yeah.
watch.
It's been a while since I've
Get
done
y'all
anything rough,
some gloves and stuff, and let's see if it works. But
think
yeah, I
I
mean,
mean,
no,
Ross has size. I mean,
wait, hold on.
anyway,
Is-
let's talk. Wait.
Yeah.
Did you just
I didn't
lean
make.
back
I didn't even
in his chair
talk
to
about.
adjust? Did Matt just lean back in his chair to adjust down there?
this is the angle that every guy sends a pic to girls. Yeah, it's not. It's not a flattering angle. Don't do it.
Yeah, right.
Don't do it. No, I get what you're saying, Matt. I get what you're saying.
Wrap it up because we got.
Wait. Let me go back.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Go back to your cake.
So yeah. So it's like can restaurant or okay. Here's the argument I would buy. If I make cakes and I make wedding cakes, I will not buy the argument that I don't make gay cakes or black people cakes. I would not buy that argument. If I was a cake maker but I don't make wedding cakes, I would buy the argument that I just don't make wedding cakes. There's a difference between framing the arguments that says, "Hey, I'm a baker and I bake bread and muffins and brownies, but I don't bake pretzels because I don't do pretzels." That's different than saying I don't do gay pretzels. And I think that's where we have an issue of if that is the framing of it, and it goes to like this conversation around Bitcoin, right? Honestly, and there's a difference between not being able to do something and not doing something, right? So, for example, there was this thing called Ethereum, the Ethereum DAO hack back in the day. And the Ethereum DAO hack happened is they're making this decentralized autonomous organization, and they lost. I can't remember how much it was. Let's call it $70 million Ethereum, $70 million of Ethereum, and they're like, well, we got to recover that. And so they chose to fork Ethereum so one chain had the money back and one didn't. That is different than having a chain like Bitcoin that doesn't allow any kind of change within if you lose your Bitcoin or if it gets hacked, you're done. You're just like, you can't do it. There's no consensus. There's no boss. There's no way. And so now what's happening is like there's this Bybit hack a couple weeks ago where North Korea stole $1.5 billion of Ethereum. And people were going and petitioning Vitalik Buterin, the co-founder of Ethereum, and saying like, hey, you did this before. Now North Korea, a nuclear power terrorist state, has $1.5 billion. You have to do something about it. So there's a difference between being able to do something and not doing it, and not being able to do something at all. And I think that's my issue with this. It's not that you don't want to make gay cakes, but the fact is you make cakes and wedding cakes, and now you're saying I just don't make gay ones. That's an issue, and that's an issue where I think that we need to we have to address.
So there's a difference legally. If you have a bakery, for example, and you sell cupcakes out of the storefront, legally, civil rights law says you cannot refuse someone for their religion, for their sexual orientation, for any of those things. So if a black person comes in and you say, I don't serve black people here, that's a civil rights violation. But if you also make custom wedding cakes, which the thing here, turns into what's art and what's commerce. And so what people are saying is that what the Supreme Court case was about, and what the Colorado case was about, was I am an artist and I make cakes, and so I can choose which ones I do. And like, by the way, sometimes that's it. I have the photographer that did our wedding. By the time we got married, because we were my cousin had used her and my sister had used her. By the time we got married, she was like, I do 8 weddings a year, and that is it, because it's my weekend and I charge a boatload of money. And so she's going to be very selective in those 8. the problem is, she may use personal bias of who she likes, or it could be something that's discriminatory. My point is that is a different thing.
Okay, I don't care about personal bias, right? And and first come, first serve. There's no other way to do it but bias. I like this couple. I'm going to take a picture of the wedding. That's a difference than saying I don't take pictures of gay people. That is totally different.
Well, but why is it?
A bias. There's a difference between saying, "Oh yeah, you come to me." Like, it's kind of like.
But aren't you infringing on that person's First Amendment rights to have that opinion? I'm not saying it's the right opinion. I'm just saying people, I think, have a First Amendment right to be racist or sexist or whatever. I'm not saying it's a good position to have. I'm saying they might have business repercussions for making that decision. I just don't think they should have legal ones potentially.
A person that we don't talk about that we don't talk about with high regard on this show is Vivek Ramaswamy.
Right.
But there is. But there is one thing that I think that he says through his campaign that I thought really held a lot of good weight to it. And that's a cultural idea and a cultural unity. And anytime that we don't have that throughout the United States, and that thread could be whatever we decide it's going to be, where it's going to be. If it's we don't have that through the United States, then I think that is when we start to fall apart. And I think that is one thing that we don't have right now is a complete cultural idea of either nationalism and what it really means to be American. And part of that, in my opinion, is saying that this is America. It's the melting pot. We do have the Jews and the Palestinians. We have the blacks and the whites and the gays and the straights. We have them all here, but that's America. And if that is not what we actually solidify and coalesce our national unity about, and we're allowed, even if you're a business, to discriminate against that, then I think that we're part of that is chipping away of what our national unity is.
Well, see, I would argue that the Bill of Rights is what really makes and to me, it's like those things are uninfringible, and including that part of being in America is not infringing on other people's rights yourself. So that to me is the standard. And that's where I go, I don't like racism. I don't like any of the isms, but I think the First Amendment gives you the right to be a bigot. I think it does. And look, Brandenburg versus Ohio says that Nazis can march in the street and say the worst stuff. And we said,
I agree.
Yes, we're going to protect that because we have to protect the stuff that we disagree with as much as we protect the stuff that we agree with. Because if we only protect the speech that we like, we're not really protecting speech.
I 100%. I 100% agree. I don't think that goes into business. If you create a business, then you play with the rules of a unity of, hey, that goes to civil rights and civil rights acts and discrimination.
But why? Why are we regulating business any different than marching? Why are we regulating business like that? I don't think we should. I think that there needs to be more freedom in that. And I think that there's, like I said, when it comes to speech things specifically. And the other thing is that
nobody's telling you what to make or what not. I mean, nobody's telling you not to make cakes. But if you're saying, no, I don't make chocolate cakes.
No, but they're telling, like, for example, my example that I used before was if you were a Jewish baker and if someone wanted to come in you to put make a swastika cake for their Nazi wedding, that would be, we would all agree that would be egregious, right? Why would we force them to do that? It's no different. I know that one's comfortable and one's uncomfortable.
That is the argument I cannot argue with. That's a good one.
But the reason it's uncomfortable is because we don't like racism or we don't like homophobia. We don't like any of these things. But the point is that we have to be okay with being uncomfortable with someone's decision. And the difference is, look, I'm not saying the Civil Rights Act was wrong, because at the time, entire states, an entire region of the country
here. You do not lead with, I don't think that the Civil Rights Act was wrong, but I
don't think we're going to go into because there's a lot of people on the right that argue that it never should have been passed, it's unconstitutional and stuff like that. The difference is in the 1960s, an entire region of the country was discriminating against black people. It was not one cake maker. It was, you couldn't get a hotel. You couldn't move, it was law enforcement. It was the state apparatus was treating differently. It was just it was Jim Crow. The Jim Crow laws were wrong. And the thing is, we don't have that now. We've evolved. And so sort of like your sunsetting of agencies, I think we need to think about things as going, okay, 20% of marriages now are interracial. Obviously, and look at the polls from 1950 to now on if people think interracial marriage is okay. they've totally flipped, right? It's
Which is the stupidest
99% of
word
people.
ever, by the way. I hate that word.
I don't like it
Interracial.
either because
It's
I
not
think
marriage.
we
Just
talk
this
too
one's
much
so
about race.
stupid.
I think we talk too much about race in general in this country. I think that for the most part, it makes people
It's
uncomfortable
it's
to be
made
around
up
other
and
races.
people anyway. Yurix as the only and besides I don't know Blake. I think he's still a little closeted. But besides as the only gay person here, what do you think about the cake issue? I assume I know your opinion.
So you're both making good arguments, and I agree. I think that
Can't agree with both of us, Yurix. Don't be like that.
yeah, I mean, kind of, sort of.
We're not having a menage, dude. Just calm down and pick
agree
one.
with. I don't know. I've been a fan of the Avs for a while. It was like
7-3 last night.
I was like them back when they were the Nordiques.
Tampa Bay, good game last night too. By the way, that was a hell of a game. Did you watch that?
I didn't. Mom and Dad are here,
It's
and
like
they
7-5.
I had always gone next door to my neighbors to watch the hockey games. Well, we're both still rebuilding our houses.
Yeah.
They just moved back in 2 weeks ago, and they're still not. We're still both construction sites, so they're no space to. Their big bar room area where they have 4 TVs on the wall is a construction storage room. But I get. I totally agree with Blake. Which one of us needs to get our temperature taken because obviously somebody's not feeling well. But I totally agree with Blake in that once you start censoring any sort of speech, where does it stop? And the current administration is a perfect example of that.
Yeah, I don't want them in charge of telling me what I can say and what I can't say.
Elon Musk says Twitter is all about free speech, and now he's suing The View for voicing their opinion about Elon Musk. When you're an agent of the government, I know because I was wrongly investigated for it, you can't influence somebody like that. In my case, it was the Hatch Act. But here, this is blatantly a civil rights violation. And talk about things like weaponizing of the government. That's exactly what Trump was accusing Biden of doing. And he's doing it 10 times worse.
Well, and there's an interesting thing when you talk about lawsuits. There's an interesting thing, like we haven't talked about that, but I think the media's capitulation to Trump's lawsuits specifically is worse for free speech than any other action that anyone has done lately. And most people aren't talking about it.
My dad's a big fan of George Stephanopoulos. And
what about smoking in restaurants? Sorry.
He just that's a health issue.
Well, you are infringing on someone else's right to not smoke. I actually think that's one thing that's gone out of bounds with marijuana laws. Like we have medical marijuana in Oklahoma, but
100%.
People just
I don't want to smell your weed, bro.
I don't want to smell weed everywhere I go. Like every park I go to, just like I don't want to smell cigarettes. I was in a band in my 20s and I did not realize how I got used to that smoke in bars thing. And now most bars I go to don't even allow smoking, not because it's illegal, but because they realize their patrons enjoy it better. And I don't realize until I go into a smoky bar how much it's just awful. It's terrible. Now that I've not been around it.
That first started happening like early 2000 when I was in the Secret Service Academy. And Pennsylvania, where I was from, didn't have it yet. But California, being the environmental health people that they are, had already had it. And all of my classmates from the LA field office were saying, you have no idea how awesome it is to come home drunk off your ass, wake up the next morning with a hangover, and not smell smoke on your pillow because it was in your hair and you didn't shower, and now you're already sick.
Yeah.
And you get that smoke smell that's now not there. You can at least recover somewhat more quickly.
Back when I was playing more bars, I had to strip in the garage and leave my clothes in the garage, or like my wife would just be like, I cannot, and take a shower. But I had to leave my clothes out in the garage. I couldn't even bring in the house. And that's the perfect example. I don't want the government telling people they can't smoke. I'm okay with them telling they can't smoke in specific buildings or out in public or whatever. I just don't want them telling, oh, here's a kind of cigarette we won't let you have, or we won't let you have vapes, or we won't let you have flavored cigars. Does that make sense?
I mean, that's a health thing. Okay, fine. It's a health thing, he says. But then you'll say we should mandate masks?
No, I'm saying you should let
So wait,
people.
The individual mandate masks, mandate businesses to have masks, but mandate businesses to have cigarettes, not have cigarettes is fine. But then you want business to have freedoms when it comes to being racist and misogynist.
No, I'm saying
So
I would like the
I just don't.
businesses to make the decision on the mask and everything. Does
And
that
the
make sense?
smoking,
No,
No,
on the
see,
smoking, because
there,
the
but
difference
smoking and
is
masks are both health.
no, because the mask mandates were not based on science. There was actually not. They did not help the way that people said they did. We were lied to about what they did.
Meanwhile, literally every operating room in the world, surgeons are wearing masks.
Yeah, but that was
But, but come on,
it was not the
Blake,
same
now you're
thing.
cherry picking. So
No.
if we don't have a consistency here, you're saying like because smoking has been proven because everybody's dying from cancer, that's okay. But when the government comes in and does other health things and says the mandate is okay. So like, what about washing hands then?
Here's the difference. Smoking, if someone's
Oh,
smoking in
come
the
on,
restaurant,
man.
no, listen, this makes a huge
I,
difference.
I want to hear this.
Someone smoking in a restaurant immediately affects the rights of everyone else in that restaurant that's breathing in the
Agreed.
smoke, right? I mean, we agree with that, right? Okay.
Right.
With the mask, first of all, there's some complication with the mask because it was like they do work, they don't work, and people are first of all, anyone that wore a mask and their nose was not covered, there's no point in wearing that mask. Okay.
Correct.
It's pointless. There's also no point in wearing
Correct.
cloth masks. We figured out the cloth masks were doing nothing. You need an actual surgical mask, or an N95 is really what you need to actually prevent particles that you can breathe into the air if you're talking about a disease situation.
I travel.
Right.
I travel with them in my bag every time I
Yeah.
go somewhere.
And
That's
I
why
think,
I'm
you know,
still
it's like,
sick. They don't
and so-
work. That's proof.
But here's the thing, that's still like you really need to keep that on you to prevent yourself from getting sick. So for example, my mom has a lung disease where her doctors wanted her to be very careful during COVID. So she wore a mask because it was for her own protection. It wasn't because she needed to protect her, like other people from her. Does that make sense? And so the difference is when you tell someone they can't smoke because it's infringing on the people's rights around them to not breathe smoke in, which we have determined is, you know, a carcinogen and it causes cancer. When it comes to a disease, we just didn't have I don't think we had the capability to say that the mask things didn't bother me as much because for the most part, the mask mandates happened on really hyper local levels. You know, it was a city ordinance or something. You have to have more restaurants. Although all the public distancing stuff in California, for example, saying, oh, you can't gather in a church, but you can gather in a bar. Those were the things where I go, no, wait, we're not actually doing this evenly. And so
the other way around, California closed bars.
No, California at one point said you couldn't, they did close bars, but then they opened businesses like bars and wouldn't allow people to go to churches. And that's where you go, no, this isn't being fair. If you are going to infringe on someone's right, I want you to at least be fair about it across the board and not have cherry pick carve out kind of stuff. So if we say in the city, no, you cannot smoke inside public buildings, period, across the board, that's being totally fair. We're not saying you can smoke in churches, but you can't smoke in bars. And we're not picking and choosing where that goes. The same thing with mask mandates. If you have to do one, again, I don't think they did as much good as people thought they did, but I'm okay with it in the moment having an emergency situation where we say this is something we can do temporarily. So in that situation, I'm not totally opposed to it.
With the mask mandate. In fact, I think Trump should have shut down the whole country for all of 2 weeks, and that would have at least incredibly minimized the amount of deaths that I think he caused. We're wrapping up, and before we get out of here, I want to hear what you guys had to say about the pep rally Tuesday night. One thing, can you remind me of something? Who is the speaker for Biden's speech when Marjorie Taylor Greene dressed in all white and booed him and gave him the thumbs down from the balcony?
Was Pelosi.
Who did the response?
Pelosi was the Speaker of the House at the time, right?
Yeah. It wasn't McCarthy yet?
No. Oh, no, not in 2020 because they had the House. Democrats won the House.
Far back? Was that incident that far back?
Oh, good question.
That's a good
question. Hakeem Jeffries was. That's a good question. It might have been. That's I don't really remember.
I'm not too sure.
I actually don't remember. Here's my opinion. We should get rid of these stupid speeches. They are pointless and worthless, and they've become a charade, and there's no State of the Union there. This was just a braggadocious thing for Donald Trump, and last year it was just a campaign event. These are becoming campaign events, essentially. Joe Biden's was a campaign event last year. It needs to be a letter sent to Congress. No more speeches. I'm done with them. This is a terrible tradition we have.
I think he should do what he wants. I think that the president should address Congress more, and we should see that more.
I would be fine with it if it was substantial. Like, let's talk
Well, I
about what.
mean, now, wait, what are you doing? You want to control the speech, control the
February 8th.
content?
No,
Stop.
what I want them to be able to do is go, here's what I want to work with you to do, Congress. I think if you're going to have the president come to Congress, first of all, I think Congress should, again, as we all agree, throw their weight around a little bit more that they
Yeah,
were
okay, here
given
you
by
go.
the Constitution.
Here you go. Al Green, Republican from,
No,
excuse me, Democrat from Texas, thrown out by a Republican speaker during a Republican president. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Republican from Georgia, was not thrown out by Republican Speaker Kevin McCarthy.
Yeah, and what do you expect?
February 8th, 2023, during
it's all-
Democratic president.
It's all only one direction. It only goes against the other party. Now, I will say this, as far as the censure goes against him, 10 Democrats voted for it, and they said, look, I don't care if he's right or wrong in what he was saying. This is
decorum.
We have decorum, and I would expect the same thing. So I give props to the 10, and look, I also give props to the people that there were plenty of Democrats that also censored Ilhan Omar for her anti-Semitic stuff that she said, and so I think censure was a little too far in this case. I would think a reprimand would have been a little bit better. The thing is, it's all a clown show, so I don't know that why. It's interesting that Congress is being like, oh, we're going to be the adults here, but you're not really, because if they were the adults, they'd say, you know what, Donald Trump, if you want to do that, we got to pass the legislation. You can't do it by yourself, and that's what bothers me about it.
Yeah, you could be bothered, and I think it's totally valid to be bothered. By the way, I'm gonna have to get back to you on the swastika on the cake thing. I'm gonna think deeply. But
By all means,
I think actually my mom made that point a while back, and it made me mad, and so.
So you buried it, and now I've pulled it back up.
Now I'm wondering if it's actually a valid point. Anyway, Yeah, Marcy Captor is one of an Ohio rep, and so is and I knew Ed Case.
Down here.
Ed Case was what was he, a state rep when I was in Hawaii? Where would he ran? He ran for like governor. Or no, he was like a lower office. I don't think he was in the Fed.
Like my point is, I think that if the Democrats would have all not shown up, I would have respected that move. Does that make sense? Like, we're not going to listen to this. I'd be okay with that.
I'm not against the paddles.
Yeah, I just felt like they were
more paddles, bro.
But like, what was the point? You know, like, what did it accomplish? I feel like
it managed the decorum. They didn't interrupt. They just waved and said, waved their flag and said, called BS.
But here's the other reason I don't like this kind of thing is because what it's turned into is this performative thing. And so you have the Republicans standing up and clapping for everything, and the Democrats will hardly clap for anything, including when Donald Trump announces that Pakistan announced that, no, not the cancer thing. That's not the one that infuriates me. The one that infuriates me is that he announces that Pakistani police have arrested one of the bombers of the Afghanistan withdrawal bombing that killed 13 Marines and 170 Afghans. And that person's on their way back to America to be tried, and Democrats were not clapping. And ABC, that was the feed I was watching, they cut to two Democrats, I don't know their names, who were just texting on their phones, looking down. They probably weren't even paying attention. Well, it looks like they're just more interested in what's on their phone than clapping for the fact that the person that killed 13
they're
Marines.
Texting each other of what we can, they're texting each other.
But my point is, that's not a partisan thing. We should be cheering on the arrest of terrorism, right?
I have 100%, I 130,000% agree with you that I am appalled that the Democrats did not stand for some things. I'm appalled that the Republicans did stand for some things.
Me too. Oh yeah, equally.
And it shows that they're all feckless little bitches with no balls to think on their own. And so you see all the Republicans stand up because that's their team, and all the Democrats not even stand up for the cancer guy or the guy who high-fived the sergeant at arms in the back when he got his little award. I can't remember what he got, whatever. Or he got
accepted to West Point, right? Is that the one you're talking about? There was some.
Accepted to West Point. That's the guy. And the sergeant at arms comes over and gives him a high five. I thought that was like a cool spot.
But here's the thing: that's also all performative nonsense and has nothing to do with Congress doing their jobs.
Oh, stop!
Breaking news. Hold on.
What?
Sportcat Glenn Sportcat Jackson, who's following us in about 9 minutes, says
Oh
that was
yeah,
a
I know
great
Glenn.
speech.
Well,
That
well, see,
was
no,
Trump's
wait. Here's the thing. No, 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 no. Wait. You knew what Glenn is gonna do right when said masks, and he all of a sudden became a scientist talking about what
yeah.
N95s
But
filter and
this
not
is what
filter,
makes me
and the
crazy.
reasons why surgeons wear masks and stuff. We knew who Glenn was. You give him the trigger word, and he's gonna like. Surgeons use masks for different reasons on the keyboard. And he
Yeah,
starts
exactly.
slamming
This
the
is what makes me
keys.
crazy. Yeah, I love Glenn, but so many people I think we know who these 10 people are. I can take this off. So many people learn a little bit and they think they know a lot. Glenn is a first responder, a very experienced first responder. And there's a lot of things that uh, I would absolutely take his word as gospel. However, I also was put in positions where I learned a little bit and a little bit more and a little bit more. And specifically with the N95 masks and the surgical mask and so on, uh, the example that I was given by an actual scientist is that yes, viruses and bacteria can go through the fibers, which is a semi-permeable membrane of that is the mask, if they were by themselves. But going through that mask while connected to the droplets of mucus prevents them from going through the mask.
Well, that's why they're called
And
N95,
and the
bro.
and the
Yeah.
the
They're not called
example he gave,
N100.
he example that he gave was take a rubber ball and throw it at a chain link fence. And the chances of it probably making it through that chain link fence are pretty good. But take that rubber ball and crazy glue it to a tennis ball and throw it at the chain link fence, and it ain't happening. That is the virus or the bacteria when you sneeze. And wearing a mask isn't necessarily you being prevented from somebody else as much as it you preventing yourself from somebody else or to somebody else. In other words,
100%.
you could be affected,
100%.
infected, sorry. My head, I did some adjustments with my headphones and now, or with my mic actually, and now like I'm just like so much more powerful in my own headphones. You could be infected and not know it. In fact, that's when you are infected, is when you don't feel sick and when you're most contagious. And that was the other thing that was actually classified at the time when I first learned it in like February of 2020. We weren't allowed to tell people that the flu, if you walk into a party of 10 people with the flu, you might infect 4 people. If you walked into that same party of 10 with the coronavirus, you will infect at least 6 to 8.
No, that is not true. It's not that high. It is not that high. And the
It
reason
was
I know this
absolutely
is
high.
because I just read about it
Guys,
yesterday.
I don't want to talk. I don't want to talk about
Okay.
numbers
Yeah,
because this is stupid.
yeah,
Nobody here.
because
But
you got to
it's
wrap up
true.
anyway.
Put on a mask. If I get sick and I'm on an airplane, I put on a mask because it helps me not get other people sick. I'm not gonna not fly, but I am gonna put on a mask and help you guys out. Hey, really quick, can we do a quick experiment and see what kind
Yeah.
of trigger words we could get for Glenn? Okay, we already did mask. What else can we say?
Neil's liking that we troll the anti-masker.
All right, so what else can we say to get him just slamming on the keyboard again? What can we say?
He
What are some trigger
apparently,
words?
I had a little birdie tell me that he apparently, and we got it, that he said it was a great speech on Tuesday night.
I like Glenn, by the way. We met him last week. Glenn's great.
Yep.
I still want to see if we can't trigger him. What can we say,
Glenn,
guys?
if you
No wall.
Glenn, if you want to join us to connect to your show, which is next, the same link that I gave you last week or the week before, I think it was, is the link. It's the one both Matt and Blake use every week, and you can hop in and say a quick hello. But Sportcat's Daily Gazette is coming up in 3.5 minutes. Yeah, I gotta take everybody through where we can get all these folks. Blake, can be reached at blake@thehomelessconservative.com. He gets out at least one, if not two videos a week. Go to thehomelessconservative.com for more on that. Matt puts a daily video out, daily crypto news. Find out more at dailycryptonews.net, or you can get Matt at dailycryptonews.net or info@demarforcongress.com. Philip Blackett joins me on Wednesdays. His socials are at Philip Blackett, Philip with one L, Blackett with two T's. Jane Stahl is with me on Mondays. She's also the manager of Studio B Art Gallery in Boyertown, Pennsylvania. You can find out more about her at studiobbb3bs.org. You can get us all at news, NEWZ, at yergz, YERGZ.com. And up next is the Para or Normal Guys. Well, that's the YouTube link, the YouTube channel at Para or Normal Guys. And that's Sportcats Daily Gazette up next. You can get any information, show notes, and whatever else by going to yergz.com or mastiff.media. All right, wrap it up. What else you guys got to say?
I feel like all of that is like longer than the end of like a Star Wars movie. At the end, the credits are flying by slowly and shit. Like, like can't you just?
I got that. I got that because when Howard Stern was terrestrial, he or Fred Norris or Gary or somebody would do the plugs, and if they had a guest on, of course, they would include the guest and whatever else. But I just thought that was good. I'm huge on cross promoting, and I wish more people did it. But yeah, just because others don't doesn't mean I'm going to stop.
By the way, in case anyone was curious, the R naught for the flu is 1 to 2. The R naught for COVID was 4. The R naught for measles 18.
Oh yeah, measles is,
and that's the problem we're having now.
We've been talking about that. We should put that on the table for next week. Ken always reminds me to tell you, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, tell a friend. Did you guys grow up with the Acme grocery store?
Nope.
In your neighborhood?
No, it was just only in cartoons. I thought it was actually fake.
Yeah.
Until I started traveling the country, and I was like, this thing's real?
Yeah. Yeah. I think Tell a Friend was their ad campaign when I was a kid, but I'm not sure it was them. But what is, oh shit. Is Blake or Glenn trying to get me on Facebook here? Or, Glenn. Why didn't you put that in the actual chat, moron? You said Glenn's messaging me on Facebook Messenger saying not anti-mask, anti-stupidity. So
because he doesn't want me trolling him anymore. Glenn's scared. I put the fear in Glenn
and thinks,
come on, Glenn,
I'm not going to talk about it.
Come on, Glenn, you come over here. Let's go.
Oh.
Did I just put up my dukes? The hell?
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
I mean, you got them. I don't.
I think Glenn's going to be joining us next week. All right, guys.
Dukes.
Trying to end on time now so we don't take away from Glenn's time, which starts right now.
All right. See you guys. Thank you. Bye.
Yep. We'll see you again on Monday. We'll see these two again next week. Thanks for joining us and getting off the porch and going up the middle with the big dogs. And there went one of them.
Can't remember my
see
mouse.
you again. Yeah. We'll see you again. See you next week.